Kia ora koutou. No mai, haere mai, ko tēnei hui. Rangatane, tēnā koutou. Te konahira papauia, tēnā koutou. Ina mana, ina rea, na mihi nui kia koutou. I will just start with the karakia. Tū taua mai runga, tū taua mai raro. Tū taua mai roto, tū taua mai waho. Kia tau ai te Māori tū, te Māori ora, ki te katoa, home e hui e. Thank you. Welcome again, everyone, and to this week's Community Committee meeting. The meeting is being recorded and it will be live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. Just a bit of health and safety, since we've got members of the public in the gallery. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave by the nearest exit, marked by the little green running person, and evacuate to the assembly area, which is the clock tower in Te Maraeohine. Smoking is prohibited. If we do need a defibrillator, it's located at customer services on the ground floor. And if there are any near misses or incidents, please report to the committee administrator, who's Nico, or to Sarah, the governance advisor. If you are presenting, if you can state your name before speaking and make sure you use the microphone, push the right-hand button on the console, and a red light means that the mic is on. I don't think we've got any councillors online, have we? No councillors online. That will take us to the apologies. So I've got apologies from the Mayor, Grant Smith, from Councillor Rachel Bowen on Council Business, from Councillor Orphe Michelet on Councillor Business, Councillor Lou Finlay, early departure. I'll just indicate that I'm expecting that the meeting will need to resume after the risk and assurance meeting. So this is your opportunity if you need to get in your apologies for early departure. No? Okay, last chance. So I'll move that we receive the apologies. Seconded Councillor Hancock, and we'll take the vote, please. And so that is carried, 9 votes for and none against. Thank you. Now, are there any additional items? I haven't been notified of any. Nope. Okay, thank you. Any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, so that takes us on then to public comment. So we've got one public comment today that I've been notified about, which is from Kerry Hockard on behalf of the Palmerston North Age Friendly Group. So Kerry, invite you to come and give public comment on item 11, councillors, the Palmerston North Age Friendly Action Plan. So Kerry, I'm sure you know the score, but you've got 3 minutes for public comment when you're ready. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. I speak to you today on behalf of the Palmerston North Age Friendly Community Group, with our Chair Russell Hallam sending his apologies. We express our support for the Age Friendly Action Plan being presented. The plan has been a wonderful collaboration to be part of, where community voices have been listened to and experiences shared. The reality of a growing ageing population, the challenges experienced, and worries about housing, unsafe environments, social isolation, and poor quality of life were also shared. The action plan helps identify how these challenges could be addressed and insights gave an inspiring future direction for an age-friendly community. The action plan shows how we can create inclusive and accessible environments for everyone to enjoy. We need to be a community where all ages can feel valued and respected. The council goal of being a community that is connected, healthy, active and safe, where age is not a barrier, is an inspiring one. But it's going to require all of us working together, council, community and workplaces, using an age-friendly lens on our planning and actions. When deciding on the options report today, please use an age-friendly lens and consider the impact of each option on the community health and well-being, particularly of our kaumātua. The preference for our group is for option 1 to be adopted. This would enable real, meaningful resourcing for the implementation plan. Community networks to be supported to be active partners in this vision and would make a positive impact on how we all live, work and play. However, we acknowledge that the current financial climate is presenting challenges. To keep an age-friendly lens on council planning and services, we would reluctantly, in the interim, support option 2, but recognise that this would cause a slower time frame and further budgeting would still be needed if this is going to make a real difference. So we would be presenting a submission for further funding in the annual budget discussions. Thank you to both the council and council staff for your commitment and belief in being an age-friendly city. We offer our ongoing support for this work and always remember is how a society treats its most vulnerable is a real measure of our humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Kerry. I will open up if there's any questions from elected members. No. So thank you for your public comment, and the item will be considered after the presentations and another report, so a bit later this morning. Thank you. Okay, so this brings us to the presentation now from the Disability Reference Group, which is item 6, and that. Oh, sorry, yes, you're right, we do need to accept public comment. Thank you, Councillor Wood. So we'll move to accept public comment for information. I will move that and Councillor Hancock will second it. And we will vote, thank you. And that is carried, 9 votes for and none against. Okay, now we will move to the Disability Reference Group presentation, which is an annual presentation from the Disability Reference Group, and I'd like to invite Hugh O'Connell, who's the chair, Lisa McKelvey and Denise Bethel, who are members of the Disability Reference Group, to come up to make the presentation. Thank you. So, councillors, just draw your attention that there has been a document circulated already. Right, well, when you're ready, Hugh.
Kia ora, Madam Chair and councillors. Disability Reference Group has been looking at a number of matters this year. I'll quickly go over those, but the focus of the presentation today is...
Sorry to interrupt. Could you just bring that microphone a bit closer to you? It's just, you're not coming across very clearly. Yeah.
How's that? So the focus of the presentation this morning is going to be on changes to disability support services. We'll go over very quickly the matters the Disability Reference Group has been looking at this year. But first of all, apologies from co-chair Natalie McLean, who's away on work commitments. To my right, we have Lisa McEvoy, and to my left, Denise Bethel, both members of the Disabilities Reference Group, are going to assist today. So over the year, we've looked at the following matters: the long-term plan discussion with Community Service Group Manager and elected representatives. We've prepared and presented a submission on the long-term plan, looked at the audit, accessibility audit updates quarterly, looked at the accessibility charter. These are updates from council staff, civil defence and how that relates to those in our community, city centre transformation. We've also looked at the Featherston Street changes, including for the purposes of active transport, site visits followed by written appraisals from the perspective of several disability reference group members with either blind, low vision or mobility impairment. We've reviewed policies such as the vegetation framework review in the public places, library management on disability matters has occurred. There's been an in-house presentation on the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities by Denise, and also that we've looked at the issues arising from changes to disability support services. So I'll just leave that part there and introduce Lisa, who's going to talk to the council on disability support services.
Good morning. Is that loud enough?
Maybe just pull it a bit closer.
How's that?
That's better, thank you.
Great. Good morning, Madam Chair and councillors. We stand before you today not just as representatives of the disabled community, but as voices for those whose futures have been thrown into uncertainty by recent government changes. Our journey with the Enabling Good Lives approach began with hope and a promise. In 2011, EGL was introduced as a way to transform disability support, giving disabled people choice and control over their lives. It was a response to the oppression of disabled people. Eventually, 2 demonstrations began, firstly in Christchurch and then in the Waikato. By 2018, when the EGL prototype launched in the Mid-Central region, we were all asked to transition into this new system. The government reassured us, "Trust us," they said. We were told this was the future built on principles of partnership, empowerment, and respect for the individual needs of disabled people. And so we did. We trusted them. We reorganised our lives, becoming employers and creating personalised support systems for ourselves and our loved ones. We believed in a future where the barriers to full citizenship would fall away, a future where disabled people would not just survive, but thrive and treated as equal members of society. But recently, that trust has been shattered. In March 2024, the government made significant changes to flexible funding and equipment provision, narrowing what could be funded and making it harder for disabled people to live independently. Then in August 2024, the government disbanded Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, transferred responsibility for disability services to the Ministry of Social Development, halted the expansion of Enabling Good Lives, and introduced restrictive new rules. So instead of moving forward with empowerment and choice, we're being pulled backward into a system that disempowers and limits our autonomy. These changes have had a devastating effect. For disabled people who were finally beginning to feel like they belonged, the future is once again filled with fear and uncertainty. One disabled individual told me, "I thought I had control over my life, but now I feel like I'm being told I'm not trusted to make decisions anymore." This is not just a policy failure, it's a betrayal of everything we've worked so hard to build. Families too are deeply affected. One parent shared with me, "We made plans for a better future for our child. We trusted that EGL would give us the tools we needed to create a fulfilling future for them. Now we're back to square one, trying to pick up the pieces." These are families who gave their all to this new system and now they feel abandoned. As for me, I'm driven by both a dream and a nightmare. The dream of utilising an Enabling Good Lives approach to plan a future where I could one day die in peace, knowing that my son was thriving in his community. And the nightmare so finally spelled out on the pages of the Abuse and Care report. A reminder of the suffering that disabled people have endured at the hands of a system that too often fails them. To many, these experiences are just words on a report or sound bites in the news, but to us, they present a clear and present danger that rises up every time we sacrifice the common good. The workforce who supports disabled people is also suffering. A support worker recently told me, "We're trying our best, but these new rules make it impossible to do our jobs properly. I feel like I'm failing the people I'm in service to." These workers and other disability practitioners are vital to the ecosystem that supports disabled people, yet the system is failing them too. These voices of disabled individuals, families, and the workforce are all interconnected within an ecosystem that must be nurtured and protected. This ecosystem extends beyond individuals and caregivers. It includes schools, churches, sports clubs, and even this council. When one part of this ecosystem breaks down, the whole system begins to crumble. When we undermine the Enabling Good Lives approach, we aren't just affecting individual lives, we are destabilising an entire community of support. The stories you hear from us may not align with what the government says on the news, and that's because while they have the privilege of standing on the outside, admiring the cage they've built, we are the ones forced to live inside it, trapped by their rules and limitations, cut off from the freedom that they claim to have designed for us. The repercussions of these changes are staggering. They are pushing our community into despair. Disabled people are seeing their lives moved into reverse, no longer able to plan for the future because they're unsure if they'll receive the support they need. The postcode gridlock created by limited regional funding envelopes is denying disabled people their right to the freedom of movement. For instance, if you want to move to another region, but that area's funding is exhausted, you could be denied support. These are retrogressive measures and they violate the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. This is not just a local issue, it's a human rights issue. And it's not just about services being harder to get, it's about being resigned to being pushed to the sidelines of your own life, where you're forced to watch while your opportunities shrink. Someone else makes the decisions about your life for you, and your voice is silenced or ignored. The weight of the machinery of government is just too hard to push back against without relinquishing even more of your soul. These changes are discriminatory in the deepest, most personal way. They strike at the heart of what it means to be human, to be valued, and to belong. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not right, and it is not just, and it must not continue. I am here to ask you, as council members, to stand with us, to use your voice to advocate for the restoration of the whole Enabling Good Lives approach, not a cherry-picked version. We need the return of flexible funding, and we need the reinstatement of systems transformation so that all disabled people, whether they're eligible for funding or not, no matter where they live in New Zealand, can enjoy systems that don't put up barriers to their full active citizenship. We stand here carried by the legacy of generations of disabled people who came before us and the families who have walked beside them, those who were abused, neglected and silenced. It is their spirit now blowing wind into our sails, urging us forward. Compelling us to fight for the future they were denied. We ask you to write to the government, advocating for your disabled constituents, and in fact the well-being of our entire community, because, like the last lady said, when we uplift the most vulnerable, we strengthen everyone. Thank you very much for listening so intently, and although we from the Disability Reference Group are delivering this request, the plea has come from the disability community at large.
Thank you very much. We'll open up for questions now, if that's okay.
Do we have any time left, Madam Chair?
Well, you are out of time, but was there something important that you just wanted to add briefly?
Just to reinforce the request that the group is actually making in the materials that I've set out, that's in the bold type. So we're requesting, in light of what Lisa said, and Council's acknowledgement of enabling good life principles, to Council promote social and economic well-being of the disability community by writing to the Honourable Louise Upston, asking her to amend the Disability Support Services purchasing rules so as to restore flexible funding to the pre-18 March 2024 levels. Thank you.
Thank you. I will open up for questions from councillors. First up, we've got Councillor Zabellan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Morena, thank you for your presentation. Apart from writing to the Minister and the Government, in your view, is there anything else we could do in terms of advocacy to shed light and try and get some traction on this issue?
We think that the most practical means that the council can adopt is to actually write a letter. We did think about leaving it open to advocacy in general, but it's probably more suitable to have a specific measure that the council can take on behalf of the disability community. But we're open to council's own thoughts about what it might do, as well as.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Councillor Finlay.
I've lost track of the organisations that are still in Palmerston North working with people with disabilities. Back in the day, there was about 8 or 9 of them, but how many are still left today?
There's DPA.
Still going?
Still going.
Good morning. Thank you, Denise Bethel. There's Blind No Vision NZ. There's Mana Whakaha, which is the EGL basically site. There's a lot of different organisations that work with disabled people, either locally or nationally.
Okay. Is there any group that sort of works with them, that brings them all together to meet and discuss?
Not necessarily. I think, unfortunately, within the space, like a lot of other spaces, it's sort of like you have groups within the disability community on specific areas. I belong to lots because my son has multiple diagnoses. So so I sort of attend them separately, but get the message out across.
So the DPA doesn't do that anymore, will they?
I haven't ever been to a DPA meeting, no. And I work in the sector. I've worked in the sector for over 30 years across New Zealand. Have a national role working in the sector.
And you've never been to DPA?
No, never been to DPA.
Okay,
so.
thank you.
Councillor Finlay, there's also the Enabling Good Lives Leadership Group, which operates in Palmerston.
Yeah. So that's from all the groups?
No, it's the leadership is nominated by some of those groups to participate in that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you all, and thank you for your presentation. I'm just interested to know the request that you've presented to us today to write a letter to reverse those decisions to restore flexible funding. Have any of you got a specific and practical example of what that looks like for someone using support services prior to March, and what that change has meant for them after those changes were made? Sorry, putting you on the spot a little bit.
Lisa can address that.
Yes, for instance, support workers, we cannot pay our support workers their travel or costs to travel with us. So if we want to travel out of our region, whether it be for work or family or whatever, we now can't go because we can't take our support worker with us. That's one example.
Another example, because I work in the sector too, there's been a halt on entry into residential services, and I work in safeguarding, so I have work with lots of people that are in situations of abuse and need a safe living environment. So that's been it's put a huge stress on people, including ageing parents. You know, what happens to our young people or our family member as we get older and aren't able to manage providing support at home for them. There's lots of instances of things happening. It's not as flexible as it was, and the restrictions are very, very tight now. So.
Thank you. That's the end of the question. So thank you very much for your presentation, and also for the work that you've done throughout the year, liaising with council and helping officers in particular and with advice on different projects. It's very much appreciated. So thank you.
Thank you.
So councillors, I'm happy to move that the committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Hancock, and I believe Councillor Naylor has got an additional recommendation, which we'll put up now, and I'll let Councillor Naylor speak to first off, which has already been moved by Councillor Naylor and I've seconded. So, Councillor Naylor, do you want to talk to your additional recommendation?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Firstly, I'd just really like to thank the Disability Reference Group for the amazing work that they do advocating for their community. I think as the allocated councillor on that group, I see firsthand the real value that adds and the strength of advocacy that comes from the many diverse group of people who make a really good contribution towards making a more accessible community and ensuring that our council services meet the needs of people in our community with disabilities. But just in terms of responding to the specific request that has been tabled here today, I would like to move the following recommendation: that Council acknowledge the impact of recent changes to disability support services, and that the Mayor write to the Honourable Louise Upston asking her to amend the purchasing rules to restore flexible funding to the pre-18th of March levels. Now, I understand, I've heard a lot of feedback, not just from the group, but from other people in our community who have been quite devastated by the changes and what that means for people that they know, or actual, people with disabilities. I've heard other feedback from them directly also. As a council, we did adopt the Enabling Good Lives principles, and that's embedded in as part of our vision and values. So, and I think it's appropriate for us, particularly given our responsibility in terms of social wellbeing for our community, where there is a need identified such as this, that we advocate. And we've obviously seen other areas and other sectors where council have strongly advocated in recent times, and I think it would be appropriate for us to advocate in the first instance by writing a letter, and there may well be other ways that we can advocate, but in the first instance I'm suggesting that is a good start.
Thank you, Councillor. I'm very happy to second this recommendation, and I think it's very much in line with the position that we've taken as a council to support Enabling Good Lives principles and to prioritise community wellbeing. And I think we've established the Disability Reference Group so that we are better informed about issues that affect people with disability. And where we are hearing a very strong message from that group about the impact of government policy on their lives, I think it's really important that we take that on board and do what we can to advocate to government. Now, you know, government, it's then up to government to make the decision about whether or not they make any amending. But I do think from our perspective, it's important that we stand up and advocate for our own residents who are being severely disadvantaged by these changes. So I do hope that you'll support this, and hopefully it's not too controversial. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and just wanted to acknowledge the Disability Reference Group in terms of the tremendous amount of work they did through the community over the last year, and appreciate getting the rundown on that, but in particular to acknowledge their request, and I thought it was very clear and compelling in terms of the way that it was put to us, and quite sobering actually to hear of those impacts in this community. And I would say in terms of response, you know, this is the least we can do, and absolutely happy to support this, and would hope that we can continue to advocate in every channel possible to see that those in our communities living with disability have the support and freedoms and opportunities that can be provided through good systems that give independence and choice and autonomy to those living with disability. So absolutely support this and hope that we can find ways to do more as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Elected members, you might notice that we've just changed. It's a recommendation to Community Committee. It's a recommendation to Council because we don't have delegation. So just to be clear what's happening. So if this passes, it will then go to Council to be approved. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A question to the mover, if I may. Just thinking back to previous recommendations of this nature, my recollection is normally we would put that council makes a submission or that council writes. So I'm just acknowledging the mayor's not here, wondering what your thinking was as to it being specifically that the mayor write to the minister rather than that council.
I had included, I had originally said that council write, and governance advised that it needed to be more specific. Okay. Is that correct? I'm happy if it says that council write, but it just being more specific, it ensures that it actually gets done and the letter gets signed and sent.
No trouble if that's...
But the intent is that the mayor writes on behalf of council. We could add that if that's a little bit clearer. Perhaps that the mayor write on behalf of council to honour with the mover.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. If you want to make that clearer. We did seek advice, Councillor Wood, on whether it should be that council write or that the CEO write or whatever. But this was the form of words that we thought would be best. But we're happy to clarify that the mayor will be writing on behalf of council. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll just add that in. The mayor on behalf of council. Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Zabellin.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very, very happy to support this and very thankful to the mover and seconder for bringing it forward. I just wanted to reflect on some of that compelling comment that we had from the reference group, particularly the use of the word nightmare, the nightmare of the dread of what your child's life will be like when you're no longer there to advocate for them on their behalf, if they are not in a position to do that for themselves, and how horrific it must be for all of those parents and family members and friends to watch that support network being dismantled right in front of them after seeing such great progress and making such good gains. So I just have enormous empathy and sympathy for everyone going through that. I think that's unimaginable. And I would really like us as a council to show our support and solidarity for that. So I just want to reflect on what Kerry's closing remarks were earlier, that how society treats its most vulnerable is a measure of its humanity, and I would like us as council to be doing a lot better than our government. Thank you.
That seems to be all the speakers. Councillor Naylor, would you like a right of reply? Okay. Are we happy to take both recommendations together? I think this should be recommendation number 2. So we've got the first recommendation, which is that we receive the presentation for information, which I'm happy to move, and Councillor Hancock has seconded. And then the second recommendation, the additional recommendation, the Council acknowledges the impact of recent changes to disability support services, and that the Mayor, on behalf of Council, write to Honourable Louise Upston, asking her to amend the purchasing rules to restore flexible funding to the pre-18th of March 2024 levels. So we will vote on those two together. Thank you. And that is carried unanimously, 9 votes for. Thank you all very much. So that brings us on to the next presentation, which is from MASH Trust. So I'd like to invite the Chief Executive, Carleen Edwards, and John Falk, Chair of the MASH Trust, to the table. Thank you. So, kura korua, and you know how to use the mics, I think. And you've got a PowerPoint, which the administrators are just popping up for you.
Thank you. Kia ora, ko Carleen aho. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, Madam Chair and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you today, and it's fortuitous that we had the 2 previous presentations because ours follows in terms of those issues. I'd also like to just introduce my chair, John Falk, known to many of you as the chair of MASH, but also to many other community organisations. So just a little bit about us. We understand perfectly the issues that have been raised this morning because we deal with this every day. We were born of Palmerston North. We now provide a range of services, a range of locations across the lower North Island. We support around 1,900 clients with about 550 staff. But we're really serving the most vulnerable in our community, and we've been doing that for almost 35 years. We have a range of services from housing to residential services to drop-in centres and vocational services, just to name a few, covering disability, mental health, addiction recovery and housing. Our board is really committed to new ways of delivering services to meet the needs of the people that use our services, and they strongly believe that that's the right thing to do, regardless of the fact that we may not be contracted for those things. But meeting the needs of our communities is really important to our board. And we do believe we know our community. So as an area, we have a higher proportion of Māori in our region, which has its own impacts. And census data suggests that 18% of our population are assessed as deprived or living in poverty, and that's increasing in recent years. Sadly, there's also a level of homelessness. Whilst we see the people on the streets, there's a hidden population of people that are in emergency housing, on waiting lists, or those living in cars or couch surfing. And it takes just a little incident for people to suddenly lose their housing or to be at risk of eviction. We have a flagship service, our Luck venue, which is really a drop-in service. We provide food, breakfast and lunches, and we provide a number of resources, and people access a number of services such as skill development, advocacy support, or just socialisation to reduce their loneliness. We've asked the people who attend what it is that they need and what they'd like to see different. And what they're telling us is that it's really difficult to access services. It's costly, or they feel that they're handed off when they're referred somewhere else, and they have to navigate the different systems and different services and providers and tell their stories many times to get assistance. And it's getting harder as communities are missing out, and we make it hard for them because we put up our criteria in terms of accessing services. And a different group of people are now accessing services as well, particularly those who have never asked for help before and are embarrassed or stigmatised by their need. But luck, as important as it is, does not meet all needs. We know that our communities are missing out, that it's getting harder to access services, particularly as funding decreases, or relative funding decreases. And people present with one critical issue, but there's a whole range of issues that may be contributing that. For instance, they may be at risk of losing their house, but then you find out there's domestic violence or addiction issues or unemployment and a lack of income to actually, that all of those things need to be addressed. There are multiple issues, means multiple increased complexity, sorry about that. And a changing environment, so policy changes, general cost pressures, means that providers are really challenged and they're having to do more with less. But there's also requirements such as compliance, training, workforce, rent, things that are actually increasing when their funding is actually staying the same or relatively decreasing. And so there's an increased vulnerability, shame, stigma and disempowerment within our communities. That's what we're seeing and that's what people are telling us. Now, your own social wellbeing forum brings together providers and talks about the issues. So the top issues that have been raised on the 2022 forum were housing insecurity, social isolation, access to health, mental health and wellbeing and cost of living. That was from the people who use services. And then the bottom four are really the providers are finding that the cost of compliance and training, the need for collaboration and connection between providers, the recruitment of a skilled workforce and funding challenges are the things that they're dealing with every day, let alone the people that come in and have increasingly complex needs. So our proposal is an idea that's straightforward, but it's certainly not simple. It's about providers working together that puts our communities at the centre of the work that we do. Rather than ask people we support to navigate through different providers and their criteria, we see the services as providing the navigation and the wraparound services to meet people's needs. It's person-centred rather than provider-centred, and it's a one-door approach and strikes when people are probably more likely to want to change or need their support. And then we can address all of their issues because we have all the providers there to link in. Often we have just one opportunity to engage individuals and their whānau and improve their lives. And for providers, it's also a chance to share resources, share costs, share training, work together collectively, improve safety, and reduce the compliance costs, the many things that providers need to meet. So, Te Whare Oranga. This is not proposed as a MASH service, but MASH may contribute some of our services into the hub. Our board, however, feels really strongly that somebody has to lead this and to get it established and has committed to bringing providers in the community together to develop it. So essentially it's a community-led service that focuses on collective impact. And collective impact is what councils do every day. So it's about organisations and communities coming together to improve equity, by learning together, aligning, sharing and integrating their actions to achieve both population and systems level change. That's what you do every day and that's what we are proposing in terms of Te Whare Oranga. And ultimately it's about improving the lives and the outcomes of the people within our communities. So we've done quite a lot of work to date. We've continued to engage the community and providers to gauge support. There's a lot of support. But we need to do that formally. We've established a separate entity by our LUC entity will lead this. We want to establish advisory board partners and complete a feasibility review or a social impact review. And we've made a grant application to that and we have a provider identified. So we're looking for today from you for support for the concept. involvement in the developing the service at some level. And ultimately, we may come back to you, to our succeeding funding for the entity to get its feet off the ground. But that's about the collaboration between providers and the community about that. It's a community-led service. It's not a MASH-led service. And we're really excited about the possibilities, and we hope you are too. It's an opportunity to work together in a different way for providers and ultimately to provide better service to the people that need it. So I'm just going to hand over to my chairman for a final closing statement.
Tēnā koutou and good morning, and thank you very much for your time this morning as well. I'm John Falk, I chair the MASH Trust, as Colleen explained, but also our local community law service and also the Sisters of St Dominic's Charity. As Colleen explained, there's a lot of information in that presentation, I realise, but this proposal isn't limited just to MASH because neither is the need. The main point here is to engage like organisations towards collaboration and therefore to look for our collective impact. I've seen a practical example of this in the work that our law centre has done within the Luck venue, because we had one of our caseworkers spend time at Luck each week for an ongoing period of time, just talking to people about their needs. And in doing so, we were able to identify a lot of good work that could be done once we engaged people in a conversation and they felt comfortable with us. And as we know, social problems interact. You can start off with a rental problem with the landlord that then turns into perhaps a family issue or other issues around the community, but also health issues that can all interact together and form the whole need. So as providers working in this space, we believe we've all got a shared agenda, and we really need to act to put the people that we serve at the heart of this work. We can then shift from a competition for scarce resources, and Lord knows they are becoming more and more scarce, and looking for different sources of funding into true collaboration, because once we have trust in our relationships, we can truly work together. So providers and communities will then be able to make a greater collective impact. And to Councillor Finley's earlier point, that's really what we're after doing. We want to get everybody working together so that rather than individually addressing our little part of the need, we can work together and help each other to create our shared vision. So we've made a start, we've got that vision, and we're asking for the Council's continued empathy and support, but as Colleen said, also we may come back with further proposals in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, John and Colleen, for that presentation. I'll open up now for any questions from councillors, and we'll start with Councillor Finlay.
Thank you both for coming. Really encouraged listening to what your plans are. And I look at MASH, which started off it's morphed from a container in the back of CBS with three ladies with a vision to the monster that it is today, really. And just listening to what you're having to say, I'm more interested in what you are looking at or what is happening within MASH for older people. Do you have anything in your grouping, if you like, for older people in general?
It's, again, it's really interesting you say that, because we've just gone through a strategic planning process about our future. So we have a number of people that were deinstitutionalised from Kimberley and Lake Alice. They're now ageing, and their age-related conditions are probably more significant than their previous mental health or disability issues. And so we're talking to the funder about what we need to provide to them, because they've been promised homes for life. So there's that side of it. So we're providing that service anyway, but there's a dearth of services for people with mental health problems and older and ageing issues. There are no services, as I recall, in this particular area, in this city. There's also boutique dementia services aren't available. We're really good at residential services, so we're looking to the opportunity to provide those sorts of services for older people, and use the skills that we have to actually address some of the need there.
It's amazing the amount of older people who are now threatened for housing,
I know.
particularly where they're renters, and it's anything along that line would be quite interesting to see what you're doing.
Yes, we're also looking at the housing side of things. So we provide some services through the council housing, PNCC housing. But we're also looking whether this is another area we see a need, and we need an opportunity to address that.
Thank you very much.
May I just add, Madam Chair, when we look at this particular issue as well, there's a very strange effect, from my perspective as a business person, in that all these sources, the sources of fundings for these various areas are all siloed. So, for instance, when we have a person who's aging and is now moving from perhaps our residential service, which has been previously quite adequate for their needs, into sort of more of a psychogeriatric type of need, suddenly you've got to look for different sources of funding in other agencies. So, I mean, a lot of the work that Carleen does and brings her experience to is trying to reconcile all of that. That's why we think it's important to get everybody working together in this area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Carleen and John. Just a couple questions, I suppose. Firstly, I'd be interested to know how you're getting on with socializing this thinking with others that might be part of this.
We've had very good feedback. Providers see it as a real opportunity, not only for themselves, but the people that we support. So rather than being referring somebody off, there would be, I'd come and introduce you as somebody who could deal with the housing issue or the mental health issue or whatever it is. So they see it as a better option, but also the potential for reducing costs and sharing issues and sharing resources. So there's been a lot of support around that. Of course, there's always the concern that if MASH is leading it, then are we trying to take over people when we're not? We don't need any more problems. We've got enough of our own. But it's really because nobody else is leading this that our board has said this is something that's really important. We really value the opportunity to work collaboratively, and so that's why they've committed to that. But it's not a MASH service, and that's the fear that people will lose their identity or that we'd want to take them over, and that's not the case.
Great, thanks. And just so I can, I guess, visualize it a little bit more, are you thinking about something that's like a physical change, like your analogy of a door, literally a door, or is it more about virtual and coordination amongst existing?
No, it's more than co-location, and it's more than rapid referrals. It's actually about what you would see, in my view, or my vision, would be a door, and you come in, and then you tell your story, and the navigator says, finds out, and that person stays with you. And then introduces you to somebody else who says, I understand that, you've got some addiction issues. This is so-and-so who'll work for you once we've found you a house and things like that. And so it's really that connectedness and that collaboration. So, and then behind the doors you might have, a big room with providers sitting there and doing their own work, but actually engaged in the process.
Great. And then in terms of, I guess, just thinking that through a little bit, if there's one door in a community of 90,000 kind of people accessing that door, or is it kind of multiple? I guess I'm just thinking about people literally getting to that door then, and how does that work?
Whilst I talk about one door, it may be many doors, but actually it's an easy way to do things. And we've talked to the other potential hubs. They're looking at providing a different service, so coordinating and then referring people on. They would quite like, the hubs that we talked to quite like the idea of a network. So that actually, if there's an urgent issue, then we could then refer to, the Roslyn hub, and they could deal with the issues locally and so forth. So it's about, it really is about working with other providers in a different way. And I think that there will be, different levels of engagement. So there will be those providers that will be there right from the start and engaged and on site. There will be those ones that will perhaps drop in and provide a clinic, if you like, 1-2 days a week. And there will be those that we may have rapid referral to. So it will depend on the services and the providers themselves about where they feel comfortable.
Great. Just find them out. Just interested if you have a time frame in mind.
Yesterday, but I think it will probably take 18 months to establish, find venue, and to develop the things like the agreements between providers and so forth. However, that doesn't mean we can't start working together earlier. Everyone keeps asking about where will this be and what will the building look like, but actually it's about the working together that's the most important bit.
Great, thanks. That's really helped my understanding, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Colleen and John. Just a couple of questions, really. Councillor Barrett's probably sort of asked some of the around about the things which I was kind of sort of curious about. Can you give us some understanding of, I guess, the extent of mapping of the social services that you've actually done to date?
So that will be part of the feasibility social impact study. What we've done is got a list of the different providers and services, and we've gone out over the last probably 6 to 9 months to go and speak to all of those. So there's quite a few of them, but actually that will be part of the feasibility study, which will also include people's formal response to this sort of concept.
Great, thank you. And I guess that would be, that feasibility work would actually then, I guess, inform the question around hub or multiple hubs, and I guess accessibility to services. Would that be a fair assessment of your thinking?
Yeah, correct. So although we've got this in our mind, it may actually be quite different once you have that formal engagement and an understanding of who's ready to go and who will want to just wait and see. So I think that that will provide us a lot of information about how the services will work together and what opportunities there are for sharing resources as well. So one of the things that people constantly raise is about privacy and data. There's no reason why people can't have their own information systems and continue on providing their own services, but there would be some link in terms of some sort of shared information. And so the feasibility study will help us untangle a little bit of that as well. So it will come down to sort of what it looks like, how it works, and those sorts of things.
Great, thank you, Karen. Thank you, John. Madam Chair.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions from me. So you indicated that you might benefit from some help from council. So at this point, at the, conception of the thing, what is the help that would be most useful for you from council for this project?
One, I think it's about a general support for us moving forward, but it would be useful to have somebody on the advisory group to actually help us navigate some of the collective kind of work, and also thinking about what do we need to think about in terms of the things that council is doing, that other providers that they're engaged with are doing, and so forth. So it's actually about having that, not a representation, but involvement in terms of helping guide us through this process.
Okay, thank you. I might just put a question to either the community manager, community development, Amy Viles, just to see, Amy, what capacity you have within your team to provide someone for the advisory group.
I think I'm working. Morena koutou, ko Amy Vaz toku ingoa. We're pretty busy, but we love this kind of work. So we would welcome the opportunity to work together with MASH. I'm picking in the first instance, we send one of our community development advisors along to meet with MASH and get the lay of the land and work out how we can provide best support.
Okay, and do you need formal direction from the committee to do that?
Sorry. No, I don't believe so. This falls inside of the work we usually do.
Okay, thank you. No further questions, I don't think. So thank you very much for your presentation, and for the work that you do in the community is very much appreciated. And thanks for bringing the support crew with you as well. Just acknowledge the other trustees and staff who are in the public gallery. Thank you. So, councillors, I'm happy to move that the committee receive the presentation for information, seconded by Councillor Hancock. I'm thinking that at this point it might be quite useful to move an additional recommendation of support for the concept that MASH has put forward, because that might help unlock staff assistance. So, doing this a little bit on the fly, I'm afraid, but if you just bear with me, I'll take some advice from governance. Okay, so we're thinking that the additional recommendation will be that the committee support the proposed concept of the community hub, or something like that. And I'll look for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Hancock. That's a good question, actually, Councillor. I guess maybe it's that council support, but then it'll have to be a recommendation to council. So we're in the same little bind that we're in before. But perhaps we'll make it a recommendation to council that the council support. Thank you for that advice. So that will have to be a recommendation to council. Well, just give us a minute to sort this out. Thank you. Bear with. Just while the committee administrators are just typing this out, we'll just say that I think this is a really exciting proposal. And as a council, we've been asking for some time, I think, that community providers try and collaborate more, that there's more of a holistic support for people as opposed to lots of separate little community support efforts going on. And I think that this would, potentially be a very effective and, I guess, revolutionary in some respects, service that would enable the person that's needing the service to be the centre of everything, and that the running around would all happen behind the scenes. Whereas at the moment, my understanding is that the person who needs the services has to do the running around, and that's often beyond the capacity of those needing the services at that time. So I think at this stage, well, my read of the room is that we'd be very supportive of the proposed concept. Certainly as staff, I think could be persuaded to carve out a wee bit more of their time to assist, and we'd look forward to hearing how it progresses. So we still need to have recommendation to council, though. They're not both recommendations to committee. Thank you. I'll open up to other speakers while we're still doing the editing. So, Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, Madam Chair, just perhaps a suggestion in terms of that second recommendation is perhaps that council support the proposed concept of joined up social services as outlined by the MASH Trust.
Yeah, I'm happy with that. Sorry, just making these things up as we. Proposed concept of shared community services, I think, was it? Shared.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Madam
At the
Chair.
moment, we're supporting the concept, councillor, so I don't think we've indicated any financial support at this stage. I knew that would come up. That's why I've included support the concept. Concepts don't have any need for any finances.
Madam Chair, actually, it's just been whispered on my ear that perhaps joined up social services may not be the appropriate wording. It could just be the concept of te whare oranga
Okay.
as outlined.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. That's excellent. We're getting there. We're getting there. Did you want to make further comment, councillor?
No, other than this is really worthwhile for this committee to absolutely endorse. There is a disparity of there are disparate services out there, many of whom are actually trying to actually provide the same service, and it is very, very difficult for people to actually navigate those services. So this concept is something which is really worthwhile actually pursuing. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks. For me, it's just an interesting contrast between what we heard in the earlier presentation, which left me with a fair sense of, heartache. And seeing this is a wonderful counterpoint to that in terms of not pretending that it is in any way a full or equivalent solution to the problem that was being presented to us earlier, but it's just fantastic to see local and regional initiatives that are speaking to the practicalities of need within the community continue to come into this chamber, and this being the most recent example. And so I'd commend the trust on their initiative in this case, and continue to celebrate the local and the regional in terms of solutions for this community. Thanks.
Absolutely, I agree with that. No further speakers. I don't think I need any right of reply. Are we happy to take these two together? Okay, thank you. We'll take the vote then.
Sorry, Madam Chair. It says on here Manawatu Tenants Union presentation. I think the wrong vote's been put to us.
Okay. I didn't see that. Sorry, where was that? At the top? Okay, so sorted now. Did everybody, would you like to do the vote again? Because I've only got 8 votes here, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so that has passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for your presentation, for coming in. Okay, so that takes us on to a last presentation for this morning, last but not least, the Manawatu Tenants Union, and I'll invite Cameron Jenkins, Coordinator, to come and present. Thank you. Kia ora. Okay, don't forget to turn your mic on, Cameron.
Good to go. Okay, sorry, I was waiting for the nod to start. Thank you all for allowing me to come today. I'm here to ask for the Palmerston North Cities Council's endorsement for a project that we're working on around how we can help improve housing in the community. So as the City Council, as a landlord themselves, I'm told around 400 tenancies or houses, and so part of the project is having an exemplar landlord so that I can start the work that we need to. So quickly go over the some points, and then I will open it to questions. I have circulated all the stuff and extra notes that support all this with graphs and stuff done by Daniel. So just to give you an idea, in terms of the Healthy Homes workload and around the actual condition of people's housing, it basically is, over the number of years, has had a steady escalation in terms of the work that our organisation has to do in terms of helping people with housing. And at this point, so far this year, it's equated to about 25% of our workload. And obviously these contribute to a large number of tenancies to be terminated for really situations that shouldn't be arising because of regular maintenance, and having healthy homes means they shouldn't be needing to be terminated. But of course we're in a housing crisis, so if they are terminated for maintenance, there's nowhere for them to go, which is quite concerning. This also indicates that the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development do a national survey on the state of rental homes, and this is the results that they have. So when 44% of the rental homes still have problems with damp and mould and keeping warm over winter, is very alarming, particularly when we know the health benefits of having unhealthy homes. And I've just got a couple of key feedbacks. These are two that I picked out from the probably 15 or 20 that I supplied in the additional paperwork around just how it actually people sort of feel and what it means for people when their homes are so are poor and they're just powerless, because it's live in a leaky home or in your car under a bridge. And as we know, we only have one of those. So really the Healthy Homes commitment that I'm wanting the council to endorse is that those who sign it have a commitment that all houses that they manage or own meet the Healthy Home standards as determined by the independent experts, and will ensure that the houses that they manage or own remain to that standard through regular checks and recertifications. And obviously the last sentence is more designed at property managers, but obviously if a property owner refuses to meet these standards, that they will no longer have their property managed by it. And I just really wanted to, cement it here really, is that, a city's greatness is actually measured not by the wealth, but by the well-being of the people. And that's really important, I think, if we want to address some of the concerns raised in the previous presentation that you heard from Mash, is that fixing housing and helping housing is a huge step forward to doing this. And so there's no financial commitment. It's just basically, as an exemplar landlord, I would like the council to endorse our commitment so that I can then carry on the work, have conversations with the major players in town, particularly property brokers and Watsons, who do manage large portfolios of rental properties. And there is certainly some appetite from a couple of the key players that they would be all inclined to support it as well, but we need to start somewhere. And I think as the City Council, standing that exemplar of what we want from landlords and for housing as a start. So I will leave the rest to questions.
Thanks very much, Cameron. Just a couple of questions from me. Are not all landlords obligated to meet the Healthy Homes requirement by law already?
Yes, they are. However, the law doesn't come into force until 2025. So the deadline is June 2025. And up until then, it's if I want to get it done now, I'll get it done now. If I want to get it done then, I'll get it done then. But we still are in this situation that we want to start stamping out some horrible practices that we are still seeing. And even then, I suspect that we'll get to June 2025 and we will still have a lot of unhealthy homes and there will still be a crisis. Bearing in mind that 18 months government pushed the deadline out to 2025. It was originally supposed to be 2024. So what do we do if we get to June next year and the deadline is further extended?
Okay. And, I'll open up to other people for questions anyway, and I will also ask staff to make a comment at some point. So we'll go to Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Cam. Is this standard, do you think, likely to be subject to frequent or significant change, or will it hopefully remain a sort of stable standard?
I believe it is going to be, it is the stable standard, and I don't think it's going to change. I don't think it goes anywhere near enough. I'm certainly pro warrant of fitnesses, etc., and it being an annual assessment. Currently, the Healthy Homes compliance can just be printed out, and anyone can literally fill in the form and tick the box to say their home is up to standards, even if it's not. So what we're wanting to do is actually to make sure that it's regularly checked and not necessarily enforced. And I'm not saying we need to be the enforcement agencies, but then it does hold people to a little bit more credibility that what they are getting is actually what they're told they're getting.
Thank you. And based on your experience from working in the sector, how is council placed? You know, if we were endorsing this, what's the state of our existing stock?
I think you're probably one of the, certainly from what I've seen, one of the best landlords around the country in terms of the social housing that is provided, and certainly the level of standards. And that's why I'm coming to the council and going, hey, if I can get the council to sign on as the endorsement for the first one, then this is going to be an easier sell to the other big players. And I mean, we're talking like property brokers who manage 8,000 homes in this region, and they're certainly talking to the general manager of the rental division, David Faulkner. He is certainly very keen to support us and help championing this as well. But I need an exemplar landlord, and I think the city council is the prime place to have that as the lead in terms of their support for social housing, the condition that they keep their houses in, the amount of investment that this council puts into social housing and to the housing stock in general.
Right, so this would be sort of more about taking some leadership and walking the talk and being demonstrably visible about how we're doing that.
And walking alongside me to be able to do the work.
Right, thank you. That's all from me.
I'll just go to Kerry Lee at this point to give us some commentary around where we're at in terms of endorsing this and what it might mean for council. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Through the chair, prior to Bryce's leaving, I made some inquiries with him about the state of our homes, and he confirmed that we are compliant with Healthy Homes across all our social housing portfolio. So in terms of setting an example, Cameron's correct, we as a council already set an example to our community in terms of those standards.
So would there be any implications of council endorsing this Healthy Homes requirement?
From a financial perspective, no, there would be no change. We already are compliant. I guess the question for elected members is how far you want to go in terms of an endorsement. If you are wanting just to make the statement that this is the standard that you would expect to see in the community, then I wouldn't see that having an impact upon the organisation.
Okay, thank you. There may be more questions, but we'll see how we go. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. That's helpful to have that information. I guess in reading the commitment, it talks about that we meet the Healthy Home standard as determined by independent expertise, and I'm just wondering, can that be any independent expertise, or would that require a further report that council has to do by an independent company to rubber stamp what we've heard today, or would we automatically, how is that measured currently?
My understanding from Bryce was that we comply with the Healthy Home standards that are set legislatively. I would need to look to my colleagues to see if we're using independent inspectors to do that. we'd need to come back to you on that specific.
And so in terms of the requirement, from your perspective, when it says independent expertise, are you suggesting there needs to be a consultant report done on that? Or is
Not at
internal-
all, sorry. Apologies, that was not to create any confusion. So the independent experts are the ones that set the healthy home standards on behalf of the government. So we're saying that the government's healthy home standards that are set by them are the expert standards. Sorry, it was just that may be poor wording, and we may need to reword the commitment, but it's certainly not saying that the council need to go and get extra expertise.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yes.
Maybe the wording could be, maybe I misinterpreted it by the way it was worded, but as determined, okay, but thanks for clarifying.
Yeah, so my kind of like the situation of if the government convened a panel on healthy homes criteria, that they would be the independent experts. The same thing as the independent panel for like living wage and minimum wage and all that sort of stuff. So it's not a commitment on the council to do it. Sorry, I may have made that more confusing. Didn't mean to.
So if the statement didn't have as determined by independent expertise, would it be the same as what you're asking for?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so you're really just wanting us to commit to healthy home standards?
Yes.
Full stop. Okay.
Yes. And then the whole idea of the expertise is so that it's not the city council deciding what part of the healthy home
Right.
standards they're going to
Okay.
abide to or not abide by it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for letting me come back into the queue. I just had a question for the staff about if council was minded to endorse the standard, whether that would be by way of a recommendation to council or to this committee. How do we go about that? To council.
Yeah, that would be a recommendation to council. If council's going to endorse anything, council has to agree to it.
Excellent. Yeah. I'll just indicate now that I'd be happy to move something if there was a second.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to work on that? Yeah. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Thanks, Cam. Just for clarity's sake, the Healthy Home Standard that's a government set of standards, but if I was to actually rent a home out now, I would actually then get an independent expert to actually then certify my home as actually complying with that standard. And there are a number of certified providers to do that work around the city at the moment.
Yes. Yes, there is. And just to clarify that, it's within up to 120 days of the tenancy starting. So the thing is you can actively have a home that's not up to healthy home standards now, start a new tenancy tomorrow, and you then have an additional 120 days to have it up to standards because it's based on that tenancy starting.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. And that explains why sort of, I guess, some of the homes that are being rented at the moment just don't actually meet the criteria.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, have we reached the end of questions? Yep. Okay, that's the end of questions. Thanks very much, Cameron, for your presentation. And we'll now have the debate.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got an additional recommendation coming from Councillor Zabellin around endorsing the Healthy Homes standards. Councillor, are you happy to move the initial recommendation as well? Yep. And who is your seconder? Councillor Barrett. All right. So just for ease, we'll have you on both of them. Would you like to speak first?
Thank you. Just while that's coming up on the screen, I'm really happy to put this forward and test it, given that we are already performing really well in this area. We already take regular maintenance and care of our assets. We do that to a high standard. Our homes are safe, they're not mouldy, they can be heated. We're already walking the talk in this space. I feel this is an opportunity to promote the good work that we're doing and to ensure that we continue to be good landlords. To me, this is a a leadership opportunity to show the standards that we are achieving and the impacts that is having on the residents, especially with the sobering stats that we've had that Cam's provided about what other tenants in the city are dealing with, and over 8,000 properties. That's a substantial number of households that might not be meeting the standard. So if we're already doing this work, there's no financial commitment. It's just an opportunity to take some leadership and show what we're doing and that we're doing it well. Ask for support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Barrett seconding that. Just a question to the mover, if I could. I wonder, in light of the questions we had earlier, whether it would be more useful to just copy and paste the wording of the Manawatu Tenants Union, but change by independent expertise to as determined by legislation. Then it's clear what we're putting up to council, rather than more vague. Would that be possible? So we just copy and paste exactly what they said, but instead of independent, we say as determined by legislation.
The only problem I'd see with that, Councillor, is that there's an added sentence at the end about if a property owner refuses to meet these standards, and that doesn't really apply to us. So
fair point. We can drop that off the end.
I'll just leave it up to the mover and seconder to have a think about that. Oops, sorry. I took you out of the queue, Councillor Dennison. Councillor Zabellin.
Oh, sorry.
Oh.
So in the meantime, could I speak to that, Madam Chair?
Pardon?
In the meantime, could I just speak to the proposal? Or should we wait until?
We'll just get this sorted out first so that we know what you're speaking to. Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you. I've just confirmed with my seconder there, and we are of the mind that, as presented by the Manawatu Tenants Union, would incorporate that because they have explicitly put that in their presentation. So we were thinking that that is wrapped up.
Okay. Councillor Wood, comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and look, I'll take that in the spirit of the recording of this meeting. We've made it clear that we're talking about legislation, so that's fine. This just makes outrageously good common sense. We're already doing it. It costs us nothing. There is absolutely no harm in putting political pressure on property management organisations in the city. Why not champion the good work that we're doing? Theoretically, this shouldn't be needed. You're quite right in your questions, Madam Chair. You know, legislation already requires landlords to do this by the deadline outline, but I would find it miraculous if 44% of homes in the country still have heating issues, that's all going to suddenly be resolved in 6 months' time. So absolutely, why not put some political pressure on? I think this is very sensible, so I'm more than happy to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This second recommendation to council, I've still got question marks around that we're endorsing a legislativeless, whatever it is, government policy, and endorsing the government policy, which is the law of the land. And I'm just kind of like, oh yeah, so that helps Manawatu Tenants Union promote healthy homes. It's a little quirk for my mind to get around. And the fact that when we're talking about having in their presentation around the idea advocating even beyond what's required for annual assessments and to ensure the standards, I just think it starts giving a theme of having more complications in this space. The deadline is being quite clearly set for mid next year, and I think that's fair for landlords that might have the financial restraints during the period of time to get those in place. And I think I've got confidence that landlords do take responsibilities to having legal homes for renters. And so give it all a chance. And so to be advocating for people to be doing it sooner, I just, you know, that might be up to the tenants union thinking that's the most important thing of their work. But for us, I'm just feeling like, to be fair in the space, that we know that our healthy homes are fine, but let's just look after our own and let the legal systems take care of the balance of the houses in the community. So mine's a little bit more of a more pragmatic approach to this. And so in that case, I'm not fully wanting to, you know, see this. I'll be interested in other comments around the council table. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I will be supporting both recommendations. I do think that we need to be aware that we have a leadership role in the community as regards housing, that we've heard previously that the tenants union deals with very few problems from tenants that are in council housing, very few. And I think this is an opportunity for us to, I think as Councillor Wood said, you know, to promote the good work that we are doing, to be clear that the standard that's set by law is the standard that we are providing, and we encourage other housing providers to provide also. I don't see any harm in this at all. It's something that we already do. If we can encourage others to do it as well, although as I noted, they should be doing it already, really. Well, then where's the harm in that? And I think, I do disagree with Councillor Dennison's thinking that we should just look after our own houses and let everybody else do their own thing. I think we have a wider role within the community of leadership in this matter, and it would be good to use that to, I guess, put a little bit of pressure on other people to step up to the mark and look after their tenants as best they can. So I will be supporting it. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly happy to support this. Appreciate the tenants union bringing it forward to us. I think just reflect on all the problems that cascade out of bad housing and kind of substandard rentals in terms of health and security and everything else. And anything we can do to get in front of that in any way makes eminent sense to me. The other angle that I'd put on this is, having spent some time recently with some colleagues in my science kind of sphere, with people coming into this country and coming into this city and looking for housing and trying to work your way through the absolute plethora of potential rentals and going to visit a few of those and working out how unpotential they actually are once you actually open the front door. I think anything that we as a city could be promoting that could help prospective residents in this community, especially those that are moving into this community, quickly identify the kind of housing that they might want to secure would be a win-win for us as a community, for people coming into the community, and actually for the landlord. So all support for this, and I do hope that this isn't as far as it gets. I hope that this is the start of something that really gets quite high adoption through the community, because I think there's a real competitive advantage for us as a city if we can pull this off. Thank you.
Okay, no more speakers, so back to you, Councillor Zabellin, for right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you all for your comments. Councillor Dennison, I do take your point that, it may not be super effective to just kind of go take an angle and go, yay, look at us, we're all legislatively compliant as we're required to be. It might not be such a champion move. However, I think government standards and requirements is something that I've certainly complained a lot, not just this government, previous governments complained a lot about them too, and we're pushing back on quite a lot of those standards that are being applied to us. We've been quite critical about the speed in which they're being imposed on us, etc., etc. I think we're really good to have an opportunity to go, this is one, we're really behind, we're going to take that and run with it, we're going to champion that, just to show that it's not all bad news. I also think that we're not advocating for people to do things sooner. I think what we're doing here is showing people that it can be done. We're showing that it is being done right now and leading by example. So outrageously good sense. Thank you, Councillor Wood. I couldn't have put that better myself, so I won't try. Please support. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zabellin. So, Councillor Dennison, would you like these separated? Okay. All right. So we'll take these two together then, unless there's any requests from anyone else to separate them. Okay. All right. Well, we'll take the vote on receiving the presentation and endorsing the Healthy Homes commitment together. Thank you. And that is carried, 9 votes for and none against. Thank you. So I think that this would be a good time to take a break for morning tea, and we will come back in 15 minutes at 10 to 11.
the response to those challenges are resourced within the existing LTP? Do you feel?
I think that we have a plan within the existing budgets that we currently have to deal with what we've got in front of us. As time goes on, that is an unknown quantity about keeping chillers going and things like that. The team work really hard, so we've relaid the space. We're trying to Marie Kondo the archive and do things like that as well. Should we need to come back to council with that, we would come through our senior leadership team and put that on the table straight away.
Thanks. So from that answer, would it be safe to say that you have the resources you need for now?
For now, yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Second question was just around digital divide. That appeared in your trends, in your challenges, and in your opportunities. And just really interested there again around how you see that playing out. How well crewed up are we for actually delivering on some of that equitable access?
Okay, that's a very challenging question because there's a commentary out there that says now that everyone will have access to AI and they can learn to leverage that. They don't. Not everyone has a device, not everyone has internet connectivity, and not everyone has the ability to navigate AI and its complexities. We're also facing more and more paywalls with content, and that's challenging as well. That's changing at a rapid rate of knots. So what we're leaning into is working with other people across the city to find out what those gaps are, how we're best to position those, making sure we're supporting families and children at one end of the spectrum and also those who are ageing in the other that may have missed out. So you'll see our work spans right across that. The other part of it too is that as more content comes through in different formats that may only be accessible in a digital format, we're going to have to adapt to that, and libraries here, Australia and worldwide are looking at what that might look like, and there's active players going on in terms of rights, access and all those things as well. So it's a complex field for us and one that changes very, very regularly.
Thank you. I guess, do we know what kind of good, better and great looks like in terms of responding to the digital divide, and are we in a position to kind of grade ourselves along that?
I think that's where asking the right questions comes in. So we need to know what we're dealing with. And I always, Peter Ridge is a great person in this space. He goes, what's the problem you're trying to solve? So I think that's what we need to do, and then deliberately and strategically look at where we go to that. And that's where that data-driven decisions will come in as well. What are we looking at? What are we needing to do? All of those things.
So I guess in a year's time, when you're back at this table talking to a new council at that point, what would you want to see changing around the digital divide?
I think that we know what the gap is. We know what it looks like. We're looking at trends across our country, across Australia. We're looking to larger library services to live in that space. Auckland Library Service, particularly Victoria and Melbourne, do a great job. I think we would have been able to see through the outcomes survey what that looks like, and then make targeted plans to actually make decisions about where we're best to put our efforts. Also working collaboratively for collective impact across the city with others. We would need to really look at that as well. So we're not duplicating effort, we're actually adding building blocks to that.
Cool, thanks. And just finally, 2026 150th celebrations, just any, I guess, how well placed are you for planning and being able to make the most of that milestone?
We're pretty excited about that actually. As I say, sort of getting some extra content into Manawatu Heritage will be really helpful. We've already had a brainstorm about what we might do, get the community involved. We will be in a building, so that's a bonus. There'll be 30 years in the Central Library as well. Youth Space will be turning 15. We've got a fair bit to celebrate that year. So yeah, we're really excited about what that might look like in terms of how we celebrate, how we commemorate, and what we create.
Brilliant. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Thank you. Just recently, I went to the Roslyn Library, and I was quite stopped short. As I walked in, I saw something, and I asked the librarians there, and they told me it was there before the bylaws was put in. The vape shop, right on the door to the entrance to the library. Has that caused any hassles at all?
This is the changing complex environment we have around our library facilities. Yes, it has caused some need to be very responsive in that space, as is the other business that went in behind the library at Roslyn a few years ago, a legal business now. So I think that it's not ideal, particularly because we have a lot of contact with the school, and we also bring our people from the Mary and Kennedy Club there too. So that adjacency will have to learn to be agile and work that out, because I'm not quite sure what the other options are.
I was really stunned to see it there, actually. Thank you.
Thanks. Just a couple of questions from me. You mentioned in your report about staff, I guess, coming towards the end of their library careers and needing to manage that kind of transition. Have you got specific plans in place for that, or how might that be managed, I guess, so that we don't end up with a lot of people retiring and then that institutional knowledge is gone?
That will be a challenge for us, because the knowledge is amazing and it's very rich, and some of our people have been working in libraries for 30 plus years. So we've worked on doing some secondments, we've worked on projects, we've got a lot of work to do in this space, but we're aware of it, and we have a number of retirements that have been indicated a little bit ahead of time, so that we can work on how we're going to meet that gap by growing the skills within our team.
Okay, that's reassuring, good. And then just in terms of the role of the library, like, how have you seen the role of the library change over the time that you've been there? Comparing, because what you've described today is so much more than the traditional library. So how has that change happened, I suppose, and how have you been able to modify people's expectations of what a library does?
I think it's awareness, actually. I think if you engage with libraries currently, you'll understand the width of what they do. If you don't, then you'll have a memory of what they were when you last engaged with a library. I think that it's fair to say, for us, we're very blessed. I always say we stand on the shoulders of giants. We had an innovative library manager who stepped into that space, 30 odd years ago when the Central Library was created. And he brought a team along with him that have lived that. We've seen a move from physical to digital content. I mean, the building at Central Library wasn't set up to be wired. We've had to work with the digital team and others to get connectivity throughout the building. The formats have changed. We don't know what formats could be next. It could be little AI generated, like Star Wars coming to life through R2-D2's tummy. That could be not far off. We've certainly worked a lot to bring multi-language in as well. And I think that's the role of libraries are about connecting and listening to what people need and what that looks like. And I suppose that's where our kaupapa is incredibly strong. Another taonga that was gifted to us, He Ara Whānui o Te Ao, which is helping people explore the pathways of the world. Their pathway, their timeline. It's our job to present those doors, and that changes every day. Also, seeing the person standing in front of you, that's really important right now. I could be great one day and not so great the next day. So our team create relationships and work alongside people for that. And I always remember Remy saying to me, a young person's not going to engage unless they're ready to engage. And so that's building trust and confidence in what we do. And the space and place thing's really important. We have people come in because they are in a car. They come into the libraries to be in a space where they are accepted, they're not judged. We aspire to be equitable, we aspire to be inclusive, and that's what a library is. Using the resources, materials that we have, people, physical items, digital items, learning how to prototype, getting the confidence to go and do something, get your license, working with young people in an alternative justice space to step back into life. That is a modern library. We're part of a bigger social infrastructure, and so we can also, a library may be the place they can. It could be MASH, it could be at the Tenants Union, it could be anywhere, but we have to be there with open arms to say, and we've had many people whose lives change. They have to learn to be a different person based on what life gives them. And I suppose that's where we have the honour and the challenge and the blessing of being those people in their lives with the support of our other council kaimahi and you.
Well, I think that's a great place to finish, Linda. Thank you very much for that report and all the work that went into it. But more than that, all of the work that you and your staff team are doing every day in the city, we're very grateful. Thank you very much, Helen, too. So I'm happy to move that we receive the report entitled City Library Annual Report 23-24, Attachment 1, and I look to Councillor Hancock to second it. I just wanted to say a few words because this is the first formal report that we've had from the City Library to this committee in the time that I've been on council. And one of the things that has always struck me has been the vast amount of work that goes on in the City Library and in the community as a result of the City Library that never really, I felt, saw the light of day, that got a paragraph in the quarterly financial report, and that was really it. This committee does have the delegation for city libraries, and I'm just really pleased to see this report come because I think it's such a wonderful encapsulation of all of the work that goes on through the city libraries, central and the community libraries. And I mean, I thought I had a good grasp on what the libraries do, but there was plenty in that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure it would be the same for most of you. I think Linda hit the nail on the head when she said that the library is part of the social infrastructure of the city. It really is, and so many of our goals that we want to achieve for the community are being advanced through the work of the library, through the programmes in particular. But also just through the space being there and it being an inclusive and welcoming space. And, definitely a key, I guess, factor to the success is the people that we have in the library. They're people that have been there for a long time. They know their stuff. I was struck when Linda was talking about what a specialist area this is. That it's not an easy area to navigate successfully, but I think Linda and staff make it look easy sometimes. And just on a personal level, I've really benefited from some of the workshops and talks that have been on the library in the last year, particularly around creative writing and the Language Expo. And so I think there's really something for everyone in the library. So I'll be interested to hear other elected members' comments, but I'm just blown away really by this report. I think it's fantastic. So big thank you to library staff. It's awesome. Right, I will hand over to Councillor Zabellin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, to all of that. It's a phenomenal report to read, and I also I'm a big fan of libraries and I spent a lot of time in them, so I wanted to take this opportunity to add my extreme appreciation and impressiveness. I'm enormously impressed by the library staff and the volunteers, the people that are working in our libraries. They always go the extra mile. Not just for me, I go in with my kids all the time. If they can't find a book, the librarian will go down and rummage around in the returns to come back with it. Just to show this kid that their request is valued and valuable and they're worth it. It makes such a big difference to a child, especially who's starting to practice their life skills of talking to an adult or putting a request in or making transactions. I think the librarians make that a really positive experience, and it gives them that skills and that growth. There's just so, I just can't give enough credit, even to the volunteers who work there, the volunteers morning tea, the stories that come out of it, how many have been doing it for so long, and how many connections they make in their community doing home deliveries or whatever it is. It's just such a positive place to be. So I think in terms of a living room of the city, and you think of the living room being a safe and comfortable place, what I witness from spending so much time in there is how many people in our city do feel safe and comfortable. They have personal connections with the librarians. They know what to expect. They know what they can get. They don't have a problem asking for the things, and they know they'll be treated with respect. I just want to give a huge kudos to all of the people who are working or volunteering in our libraries, because you do a huge credit to our city and to our young people who use it. So thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and absolutely in the same vein. I was really staggered when I actually sat down and actually saw the extent and the breadth of services that our library services actually provide for the community. It was so good to see it all encapsulated in one report, and just really sort of how the library is, I guess, agile and evolves to ensure that that it connects really effectively with a very, very diverse audience, and stays relevant. You know, as we become more digital in our daily lives. I think the report really reflects just how inclusive and welcoming I think that our library services actually are for our community, and they just deserve the highest praise and congratulations. Thanks.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to share a brief comment around usage, because I've often sat here and thought, oh, well, I don't use the library because I don't have a library card and I don't get books out. But it's only upon reading this report and hearing the conversation we've had that I've reflected and gone, well, actually, I've been to the library 4, 5, 6 times this year for different events and activities and things. And it's hearing you say it, well, that is a library, that is usage of it. It puts something into perspective for me, anyway, in terms of what the actual point is, because I probably did have that old-fashioned view of, oh, well, libraries for books. So it's, yeah, been very interesting to read this report and hear it. And the only other thing I wanted to say is the club sandwich thing, I'd never heard of that before. I think it's fantastic. Only 600 uses a month. That could be 2 or 3 times that much. I know so many people who say, oh, there's nothing to do in Palmy, because I don't know how to get involved. You know, you Google, oh, I want to be a part of a book club, whatever it might be. Have one place where it's all there together. I went and had a look through it as soon as I read it in the report and thought it was fantastic. So I appreciate there's a note in the report that says, oh, we're looking to, you know, advertise this wider, and I'd just be really supportive of that, because I think that's a very useful resource that I suspect a lot of people don't know exists. So anyway, great report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and firstly, thanks to staff and particularly Linda and her team for just the incredible work that does happen in this part of the council and community. And like you said, an absolutely wonderful and comprehensive, clear report. A huge amount to celebrate in there. But I also really appreciated it being quite frank about some of the challenges that are still there, and I think we need to keep our mind open and ready to respond on those, but absolutely heartened by this report and underscoring the fact that the library and the various activities and services there continue to be one of the great strengths for this community. And great to see some of the headline numbers heading up in terms of numbers of visits, etc. But just understanding how much depth and richness is behind those headlines in terms of the offering to the community and responsiveness to the community. The final thing that I'd comment on is around the standard of reporting. We've had a few recent reports back to various committees. You know, again, this is another one that's around the $10 million mark in terms of the public money invested into this space, and I thought this was an absolute exemplar of quality reporting so that we have very clear information to hand around the value proposition that we offer to the city. And so would commend the staff that have put the effort in to bring an excellent report and just acknowledge the huge amount of value that's created through that. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues, for their supportive comments, and I absolutely agree with all of them. And I think, I was just thinking, you know, what would the mayor say if he was here? He would say that the library is the jewel in the crown of the city. So I think we'll leave it on that note, and thank you very much to staff for all their work on this report. I know a lot of work and thought has gone into it, and it was evident through reading the report, so thank you. Okay, so we will now take the vote to receive the report. And that is carried, 9 votes for and none against. Thank you. Okay, so that takes us on to item 11, which is on page 89, and that's the report on the Palmerston North Age-Friendly Action Plan. So I'll invite Amy Vars, Manager Community Development, to present the report. Thank you.
Tēnā koutou katoa, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Ko Amy Vals toku ingoa, he kaimahi aho te Muto Tawhi Hapori, Acting Manager Community Development. I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge Kerry Hokard, who was employed by Council for a 12-month fixed-term contract to undertake the age-friendly community engagement and develop the Palmerston North Age-Friendly Action Plan. I'd also like to acknowledge the Palmerston North Age-Friendly Community Group and Council officer colleagues who contributed to the development of the action plan. I'd like to start with some key points raised in the report. Council and census demographics indicate an ageing population both nationally and in Palmerston North, which will have an impact on citywide planning for the sector. Council has made a commitment to becoming an age-friendly city. It's important to note, though, that there are no set requirements for Council to maintain membership status to age-friendly Aotearoa New Zealand. 2 key points are important to consider. Council needs to demonstrate the development of an age-friendly action plan with the community, and this part is now complete. And Council needs to be leading the age-friendly plan with community, and the pace at which we deliver this work is presented for consideration today. Council has a significant role to play in the provision of an age-friendly city across all 8 domains outlined in the report, not just in preparing for an ageing population, but across all age demographics. There is a strong correlation between age-friendly cities and enabling good lives principles. By focusing on everyday activities that are accessible and easy to navigate, the same principles can be applied across all groups within a diverse community. The age-friendly work was not included in the long-term plan for deliberation, as the action plan was still under development, and we were unable to indicate at that stage the level of resourcing required. The option included in the recommendation aligns with the current remuneration budget. It has no future budget implication and enables the work to continue within this financial year. This option allows for a level of support towards Council's age-friendly commitment. It is likely, though, that this option will result in the implementation of the delivery of actions at a slower rate than option 1. By comparison, currently the Council's Welcoming Communities and Play Mahi is supported by a full FTE advisor role, which ensures that the scope and delivery of the work to a high standard. There is correlation between both of these areas of focus and the age-friendly work. Council have also committed resourcing for $100,000 in years 1 to 3 to pilot 3 youth development initiatives. Community development would be able to undertake the age-friendly work with additional FTE. Alternatively, if additional FTE was not allocated, in order to deliver the age-friendly work, another area of current community development work would need to be deprioritised. And just finally, the details of the implementation of the action plan are still to be determined until we can finalise resourcing requirements. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Amy. Couple of questions from me to start with. In terms of the option 1, option 2, how was it determined that option 2 was a better option to recommend to elected members rather than option 1? I'd be interested in the decision making that occurred there.
Thanks for your question. It's a tricky one. You could see by the action plan that there is a a significant amount of work that could be done. We hadn't come through the long-term plan, so we were aware that there was no budget allocated. But for me, one of the main reasons is that reallocating the budget allows us to get cracking on the work. You'll see from the action plan that we're ready to go with start developing implementation. So the implementation, if you think of, say, play or welcoming communities, how there's an action plan and there's the implementation plan. So we're ready to go on that. All previous reports outlined a stepped process, and we're currently at the end of step 3 where we're ready to go for step 4. If the budget was reallocated, it would mean we would be able to start moving forward. Option 1 means waiting until after the 1st of July if we were successful through the annual budget process, which in effect is another 8 months.
Okay, so if elected members were keen to maintain the pace of development of age-friendly, is reallocation of the $30,000 this financial year going to be sufficient to maintain that pace?
No.
Okay, so what needs to be done to maintain the pace?
An additional amount of people resourcing and potentially maintaining a level of implementation budget. So in the report, we outlined that some initiatives outlined in the action plan could be put forward for the Community-Led Initiatives Fund if it met the eligibility criteria. So an example I gave was a seniors forum, which on the surface obviously looks like it aligns, but it would have to be assessed and it would have to be put forward by a community organisation and be community-led. So there could be some resourcing through other community funding for some community-led initiatives.
So I guess option 1 only refers the consideration of an FTE, 0.5 FTE, to next year's annual budget, doesn't it?
Yes.
So that doesn't even provide a person to do the work this financial year.
Correct.
Okay. I'll pass over to others for questions while I think about that. Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and my questions are on a similar line. I think we might be thinking a similar vein. So what say we went with option 1 to refer effectively the $80,000 request to the annual budget process, but also in the meantime spent the $30,000 implementation budget up until the annual budget period on hiring a 0.3 FTE. Could we do both? So we make the decision now to get the work rolling, and then we also refer that request to the annual budget.
Thanks for your question. Through the chair, I mean, that's a decision for elected members, but yes.
So I guess my question is, if we went with option 1, what would happen to the $30,000 this financial year? It would just not be used?
No, it could still be used for community-led projects. So, for instance, I'll go back to the example of a seniors forum. If the community chose that was something that they wished to deliver, which has been indicated to us through the community, that we could use that implementation budget for that.
Okay. My other question was on page 102 regarding 4.9. It talks about the Office for Seniors having a fund available for progressing age-friendly opportunities. I believe we've already accessed that in the development of this plan. Are we able to access it again for now the implementation of this plan?
Yes, but not until 2026.
I see. All right. And I see it's only noted under the ideas in option 2, but I take it that it would also happen under option 1 that we would consider applying for that fund again.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Well, I might indicate now, Madam Chair, I'll be willing to move, or unless you already are willing to move, that we go with option 2 for now, but also make a referral of the annual budget, but I'll talk to that later.
Thank you, Councillor. I was just checking with the customer. Sorry, I forgot your job title now. Customer and Community GM. Whether or not we could move both options 1 and option 2. Well, option 2 provides the 30,000 available for FTE up into the annual budget, and then option 1 refers the funding for 0.5 FTE to the annual budget. So if you'd be happy with that, I think we might put that together. Okay, great, thank you. Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I've also kind of been sort of thinking along the same lines, but I'm just really interested in, like, the obvious next step is, or where we're at the moment is we're about to develop an implementation plan. Can you perhaps just give us some understanding of the complexity of that process? You know, I'm concerned about sort of the slowness, I guess, of developing that.
It requires engagement both internally and externally. So there's actions that have been outlined within the 8 domains. Some of those are ones to continue, some are to enhance, and some are new. So it's setting the timeframes for the delivery on those things against each of the 8 domains. One way that our action plan differs from other action plans across the country is that we have separated out the actions that council could be directly responsible for delivering and the others that are community aspirations or that we could partner with community on delivering. We're less comfortable with council claiming things that we weren't directly responsible for delivering. So that's the bit about both internally and externally working collaboratively. So it's more working out the timeframes for each of those things, and part of that is budget considerations too. What could be delivered within existing budgets across each of those domains, what may need to come through an annual budget process, what could use that implementation budget.
Yep, okay. And so that work that has to be done with external agencies and things like that, that collaboration and work, so that really sort of does require additional resource to be able to achieve that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Finlay.
Yeah, point of clarification for a question. Did I understand it that we could move option 1 and option 2 together? I'd indicate I would like to do so. Question, if option 1 went through only, would that mean that there'd be no further work done from council in age-friendly until the next annual budget?
It's a difficult question. No. The straight answer is no. It would be very difficult within the community development team for us to be able to carry that work forward.
So you need
given
money
the
for
current
staff.
capacity, yes.
Okay, so if option 1 and option 2 went together, you would have money there for staff time?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. That's the end of the questions. Thank you very much, Amy. So I've already indicated, along with Councillor Wood, that we'd be happy to move option 1 and option 2. The advice from governance is that that would be best done as an additional recommendation to include option 1. So I'll speak to that, and then it will hopefully be on the screen soon. So what the problem that we have is that we need to work within this year's annual budget to deliver as best we can on the age-friendly action plan this financial year, as well as planning how we will do it going forward. The reallocation of the existing 30,000 of implementation budget will allow work to continue this financial year, and I think that's very important. We don't want a stall in the process. Option 1 signals an intent to support a budget for a 0.5 FTE in next year's annual budget. And I think that will be extremely important, along with implementation money. Just generally, the age-friendly action plan, I think, is a really vital and important part of our work to make sure that we're providing a community that's fit for all of our residents. We know the demographics show that the community is ageing, We hear regularly about issues of social isolation, digital divide, and other issues that affect older people. And I think this has been sort of on the council books for a long time without much progress being made. I honestly feel as though it's been talked about almost since I came onto council. Councillor Finlay's nodding. But in terms of progress, we haven't moved very fast. So I really would urge you, councillors, to not only support the reallocation of the existing budget towards an FTE for the rest of this financial year, but also to support the additional budget to the annual budget deliberations. And just in anticipation that someone might say, well, why wasn't this in the long-term plan? Because the action plan hadn't been completed then and the amount of resource wasn't known at that point. So to summarise, I think this is an extremely important and valuable piece of work that we should be funding adequately if we want to achieve anything from it at all. And that I think it's very important that we maintain the pace. So we've got option 2 and recommendation 2, but also option 1. Yeah, so that should say refer an additional budget. That council approve option 1 and refer an additional budget of 50,000. Yeah. Okay, so that's moved by me, seconded by Councillor Wood, and I'll open up for other comments. Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to second this. There's 3 things going on here. So there's a series of actions that say continue, a series of actions that say enhance, and a series of actions that say new. By funding FTE, that gives us an opportunity to work on the continue and the enhance actions, because that provides a cross-organisational and cross-council view of the programs we're doing. What having no implementation budget severely limits our ability to do is the new actions proposed in this plan. And so my concern with only endorsing option 2 is that by implication, we are saying we won't refer that request for additional budget to the annual budget deliberations, and I'm not happy with that implication. I'm not saying today that I will absolutely support every single dollar of it. We might be an option where we keep the 0.3 FTE, but then have a $20,000 or $30,000 implementation budget. There might be a world where we support all of it. I don't know how that'll all come out in the wash in the annual budget, but I think it's very sensible at this point for us to refer it into that process so that it's then in the mix. Because if we don't do that, the implication we make is that we don't want to discuss the annual budget in 0.3s all you get. And I don't think that's a sensible way to approach this incredible piece of work. I also think it will be quite useful in having a 0.3 FTE that they'll have a much better understanding and I would say roadmap of what we could then spend money implementing on as we go into the annual budget. And so if it finds actually there's a request for more, a request for less, or whatever it may be, we'll have somebody there who specialises in this area of work, which will be very useful in our annual budget deliberations. So I don't see any reason for us to push pause on this and waiting for the annual budget. I think we might as well get on, get some of the work started, and then make a call then. So very happy to support, and I'd encourage all councillors, whether you're supportive of additional budget or not, to at least have this in the mix for the annual budget discussions.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Meehan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I totally support this, option 1 and 2. I think it's fair to say that there's finally been some momentum with this, and we just don't want to see it stop. As you pointed out, Madam Chair, this has been going on for some time now. We've all claimed we want to be an age-friendly city, we want to have the title, but do we want to do the work, you know? Let's get on with it and get it done. Ageing population, we see clearly on page 1111, that we have an ageing population, and we see in a few years' time, the ageing population will be our biggest population, our older generation. So I think when we talk about 50,000 here and 30,000 there, it's really, really peanuts on the scheme of things. We spent $7.4 million on a dog pound. If we can invest in puppies like that, surely we can invest in the people that have paid rates in the city for over 50 years and built what we've got. Thank you.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you. Thanks for the report, and certainly I want to acknowledge how important this area is, and it's good to see the progress and the action plan that's included. I'm really happy to support these first two recommendations. I do have some reservations around the third one in terms of that being an additional budget, and I realise that is for consideration in terms of the draft annual budget, but anything that gets referred to draft annual budgets, I think, are very hard to. It's a hard decision to actually take something out that's been referred. And so it's at this point that I want to just acknowledge in our long-term plan the huge increase that we had in the whole community support area. I think it was the biggest activity area of increase out of all of our activities in council, even comparing to the waters and things. It was around 58% from last year through to this year. And whilst there was acknowledgement from officers in terms of the breakdown of that there was some transfer, the actual real increase is quite significant as well. Specifically, even just support to community groups went from 3 million to 5.5, and then next year is 5.7 million. So we are seeing, and we'll see this in our next report, we are investing significantly. So whilst I acknowledge that this is a really important area and would support investment into this going forward, I think we need to start looking at utilising our existing budgets and reallocating that through reprioritisation rather than always resorting to additional budget, especially when we have allocated significant additional budget to this area. I think what we heard from our ratepayers earlier this year, we need to keep in mind for all these little decisions that happen throughout the year, and instead of just referring things for additional budget all the time, we need to consider what can we drop off that's less important in order to accommodate this very important activity.
Councillor Finlay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Back in 1998, 1998, I think it was, Mr. Voss came to council and complained about the state of the Papaioa Place units and how they had to be replaced. What was it, 25 years it took, and we got them done. And now look at us. We're talking about it and we're crowing about it, how great they are. Aren't we the best in the country? We were the second in the country to apply for age-friendly status. Now I think there's about 15 or 20 ahead of us. And now here we are, we've got the ball rolling, we've started it. And some people are thinking about, let's stop it for a while. Man, that's prestication as ever there was any. We've started. We're really getting there. We've got the community behind us. In fact, the community group is reporting back to the community in the near future. The first meeting we had in this chamber with 60 different groups saying to us, get ahead with it, get it going with it. What was that, 6-7 years ago? To say, let's take a breather, let's have a cup of tea, would be ridiculous at this stage. I don't think we should put the brakes on it. We've got a really good reputation in our community with Age Friendly. We've got a good reputation with the Minister of Seniors. We're looking forward, we're looking at possibilities of getting funding. Why on earth would we stop? To me, that's ridiculous. I urge you to vote for all three so that we can continue at the pace we're going. And it's not a fast pace, unlike other councils. It's a very steady pace. And can we just carry on doing it so our community can see that we do think about age groups in the city. And it's for all ages, remember, not just older people, it's for all ages. So I ask you for your support. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Thanks, Madam Chair. And I won't actually, I will be supporting all three, but I won't be making any comparison between what we're actually discussing here and a dog pound. The implementation of, or the growth of a implementation plan actually does have considerable complexity. So, and concerning our demographics and what those demographics are going to look like in the next 10 years, I just see this as an absolute priority in terms of consideration, certainly for our annual budget next year. And I guess probably just to make sure that we've got some context around annual budget considerations next year, is that every year we go through an annual budget which really just talks about numerous line items. This would just be one of them, and we do get an opportunity to actually bring stuff, new stuff in, and also take some old stuff out. So the argument of just adding in, that's actually doesn't represent what actually does happen. So I'm very, very happy to consider this the 50K next year when we go through the draft annual budget, Madam Chair.
Thank you. There's no more speakers, so I'll just exercise a brief right of reply. Thank you, councillors, for your words of support, mostly. And I think at this stage, what we're signalling is our support for the age-friendly plan being led by council, keeping up the pace and wanting to make sure that the work continues this year and that we indicate our support for it progressing next year as well. That's not to prejudge any decisions that might be made around the annual budget, but it is to make sure that this is in the mix when we come to that decision making. So I'll ask for your support. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Councillor Naylor, did you want number 3 taken separately? Okay, sorry, staff. I'll just check with governance. Are we going to do 1 and 2 first? Yeah, we'll do 1 and 2 first, and then we'll do 3 separately. Okay, we should be ready to vote now on recommendations 1 and recommendations 2 together. That's carried 9 votes to none. And now we'll vote on recommendation 3. And that's carried 8 votes for and 1 against. Thank you, councillors. At this point, we'll need to adjourn the meeting for lunch, and we will resume after the Risk and Assurance Committee is finished. So Risk and Assurance will start at 1 and we'll resume when that meeting finishes. Thank you.